Man, this castle sucks.
I can read an entire book.
This podcast is not suitable for children or those who are easily disturbed.
I mean, I feel like it's important to wipe your ass.
Yeah.
Spoiler warning for whatever is in the title of this episode.
And now for the obligatory socials. Please like, share and subscribe. Follow Daniel at DStarSick on Twitter. Follow Ryan at Darth Damio on the Bluebird app. You can find the podcast on Twitter at HorrorPod69. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Slasher and Goodreads. Become part of the Disturbed community by asking for the Facebook group and Discord links. Send dick pics to the Horror of Babylon podcast at gmail.com. Support the show at patreon.com/the Horror of Babylon. In closing, you can let your friends know that the Horror of Babylon is available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible and all other major podcast apps.
Welcome to episode 56 of the Horror of Babylon, where we are discussing Bram Stoker's Dracula. I am Ryan, and with me as always is Daniel. Say hi, Daniel.
I bid you welcome.
And Hef's here too.
That accent was atrocious.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I can't.
It's really more Romanian than Transylvanian.
I can't do accents. It's like my worst thing.
It's your unsuperpower.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to tell people at work that I'm the world's first mutant, and my ability is technology disruption.
I feel that one too. So,
all right, just want to give a quick trigger warning. There are some anti-Semitic comments in this novel. Not going to be something we're super discussing, but I want to acknowledge that because I don't want to sweep it under the rug. And additionally, there are some descriptions of Slovak and Romani people that are not super flattering. So
only Christians can stop vampires. It's in the rule book.
Yeah, for sure.
This is the rule book.
And then also, like we said at the beginning of our Frankenstein episode, our coverage of this book will not be and cannot be comprehensive.
There's just too much written on it.
No. In the introduction to Powers of Darkness, which is an alternate version of Dracula, it said there has been enough books written about Dracula itself to fill a small library on their own. So
I have like 4 or 5 books just about Dracula.
Yeah.
It's like Stephen King, A through Aardvark.
A through Aardvark. Okay, so let's go ahead and kick it off with our history with Dracula. Like with Frankenstein, we're going to be talking about, not just the book, but the character, the story, just the, not franchise, but, the abstract idea of Dracula itself. So, of course, we're going to throw to our resident vampire guy, Daniel. What's your Dracula meet cute?
The first adaptation of Dracula I ever saw was Bram Stoker's Dracula by Francis Ford Coppola, and that sort of painted my entire image of what Dracula is. And then I saw, the Universal film, and I was like, oh man, that's way different than the movie I saw. Then I started watching, I think I watched at least 4 or 5 different adaptations before I even tried to read the book, and I tried to read the book once when I was a freshman in high school. And I was like, what is this journal stuff? Because that was back before I developed a taste for it.
Yeah, I'd say of, the 19th century literature I've read, it's probably one of the most easy ones to read.
Yeah.
But it's, if you're a 14-year-old kid picking this up, it's going to be difficult. At least for me.
I agree. And I had a hard time. And then I picked it up, probably in college, somewhere in my 20s. And then I read it, and I was like, oh, this is pretty great. And then I read it again a few years ago. This is pretty great. And then I listened to it for this podcast. This is probably one of my favorite books ever written.
Did you do the Audible edition?
Yeah.
Yeah, with Tim Curry and Alan Cumming.
Yeah, it was great.
It's so good. If you've not read this and you're intimidated, Audible has a version that's narrated by a full cast. It's not a dramatic... it's not an audio drama. It is an audiobook where each person's character, or each character's journal entries is read by a different actor, and it has Tim Curry, or as we like to call him, Tom Curry.
Tom Curry.
And Alan Cumming, who was Nightcrawler in the X-Men movie, well, in the one X-Men movie he was in. And also Simon Vance, who's one of my favorite narrators. I cannot recommend that one enough, and it's free if you have an Audible membership.
Do it for Tom.
Yeah, do it for Tom Curry. Hef.
Didn't have a whole lot of experience with Dracula himself growing up. I can tell you the first vampire movie I ever saw was called The Lost Boys.
Okay. Very 80s.
It scared the shit out of me, and I developed a complex where I didn't watch anything with vampires until my teens.
Wow, I had the opposite reaction.
Nope. Kiefer Sutherland hissing at me was enough to stave me off for about 10 years. Then I got to high school, and actually Dracula is one of our required readings.
You
in high school.
motherfucker.
It was required reading.
You know what I was required to read?
Not my class.
Cold Sassy Tree.
I have no idea what that is.
Do you remember?
Good. It's bad.
Do you remember the horror novel that was that we read in our 10th grade English class? I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Oh, that's right.
We should do that book and compare it to the movie.
Sure.
It's
funny.
fucking hilarious.
I think I remember okay, yeah.
And the ones that she passed out had the movie cover.
it was my senior year. I read
nothing alike.
It was my senior year. I read a lot of really good books in that senior class. Like I had like two of my favorite novels, period, I read in that class. Dracula was one of them. Unfortunately, because I again had the reading ability of what I can only imagine as a 7-year-old at that point, did not make it through it. I think I got through the first part of 3 because it was around the time the socialite stuff started happening that I kind of fell off. And then years later, got a hold of the audiobook. Much better as an adult.
Yeah. So for me, I never saw any of the Dracula movies as a kid. The closest I saw was Leslie Nielsen, Dracula Dead and Loving It.
Amazing.
Or Scooby-Doo and the Reluctant Werewolf with Dracula and his crazy car
Also
race.
10 out of 10.
Yeah.
The werewolf wagon.
You know, all my experience with Dracula was him in other things. Fucking The Monster Mash or Hotel Transylvania. I've read and seen like lots of other vampire stuff, but I've never experienced Dracula until last year, when I got really into Stephen King and was reading all his books and decided to take a break and do some classics. I did Carmilla and Dracula and Frankenstein. And then after I did the book, which I did through the Audible edition with Tom Curry, I went and watched Nosferatu and watched the Bela Lugosi Dracula. And I haven't seen the Bram Stoker's Dracula with Gary Oldman yet.
Can't wait.
I'm saving myself until we cover it.
Ooh.
I'm kind of wishing I don't like it so I can just like poke Daniel the whole time.
Keanu Reeves takes up a significant amount of screen time, so there's a chance he won't.
I didn't know he was in it.
He's Jonathan Harker.
He's Jonathan Harker.
Oh my god.
And he does a horrible English accent the whole movie. It's great.
Oh my god. I'm having chest palpitations.
Payback is a bitch.
But I love Gary Oldman though.
Yeah, he does amazing.
Okay.
But everyone remembers Keanu Reeves. Like anytime someone talks about this movie, that's what they bring up.
Oh. All right, I'll try to go in with an open mind. But yeah, that's me. And then I reread it. After that, I read Powers of Darkness. And then I reread it for this podcast, and I'm currently rereading Powers of Darkness. So in a way, I'm reading this book for the 4th time, but not really. I've really read it twice.
Yeah. We'll get to that on Powers of Darkness.
Yeah, I'm not just stating it what it is. We're going to do a whole episode on that. We're not going to get into it yet.
I was going to do this bit where I called him Bram Stoker the whole time, and saw how long it took for people to correct me.
I do that when I'm typing.
Yeah.
All the time. And so much so that I actually came up with, like, in my hand, he stoked the fires of horror.
Yeah. So, but I was like, I don't know how long I can keep that up when I actually remember.
I read that as Brain Stroker.
Brain
And I'm
Stroker.
like, who died?
He had a stroke.
The vampires are pure myth, superstition. I may be able to bring you proof that the superstition of yesterday can become the scientific reality of today.
Bram Stoker was born in Dublin, Ireland in 1847. He moved to London in 1878, where he got a job working for Henry Irving, who was the most popular actor in London at the time, working at the Lyceum Theater. He became the manager of the theater and of the actor. And he actually traveled all over the world touring with the Lyceum Theater Group. He went to the United States and Canada. He met President McKinley and, at the time, Vice President Theodore Roosevelt, which I'm going to bring that up again later when we get to characters. Once he left that job after acting, the theater kind of started doing badly. He decided that he was going to try to make it as a novelist, and he spent 7 years on and off again writing Dracula, which would become one of the greatest novels of all time, arguably the greatest Gothic novel of all time, arguably maybe the greatest horror novel of all time. We'll see.
We'll see when we get to rankings.
Yeah, we'll see. So, some possible inspirations for this, and I did a little bit of research.
I also did a little bit of research, but I couldn't find the name of one, but I'll let you go first.
Bram Stoker only did one interview about this book. So, primary sources about him and his process and his inspirations are very limited, and it was a small interview. It was only about 800 words. So a lot of this is speculation. Some possible inspirations for the book: historical figures of course, Vlad Dracula, known as Vlad the Impaler,
Vlad Tepes,
or Lady Bathory, who we actually discussed during our Carmilla episode.
Mm-hmm.
Literary inspirations: The Vampire by John William Polidori,
100%.
Who of course was a contemporary of Mary Shelley and part of her fireside orgy groups. And
Hot.
Also, fellow Irish literature author J. Sheridan Le Fanu's Carmilla, which we have done an episode on. You can go back into the archives and listen to that. The influence from this story specifically, you can really see in the short story Dracula's Guest, which we are also doing an episode on, so we'll come back to that. And also the Irish folklore legend, and I can't say this, the Abharatak, but basically it's an Irish vampire.
Yeah, whenever we do our playlist, I have a video that, this is like the little bit of research I did that like broke down how this is probably the major inspiration, and how there's like some writing that suggests that Bram read stories about it as a child.
The thing I read said that his mother and father were very into Irish folklore.
Yeah.
And he was exposed to it a lot as a kid.
And the video's so good.
Yeah. That sounds great.
I should have sent it to you, but I didn't think about it.
And then exploring the Dracula canon.
Ooh, boy.
With some other... The two other Dracula works that you can attribute to Bram himself are Dracula's Guest, which is a short story that was published in 1914 by Bram's widow after he died, about a nameless man who's presumably Jonathan Harker, and it takes place before the start of the novel. Speculation is that it was at one point a part of the novel and was eventually cut, and she found it in his notes and published it to get some more money. And then Powers of Darkness, which, like I said, we're doing an episode on, we're not going to get too deep on, but is an alternate version of Dracula.
Yeah, it is.
And then there are countless spin-offs and sequels and prequels and adaptations and so on of Dracula and the Dracula characters. But I do want to shout out Bram's grandnephew, and I've seen this pronounced different ways, but his first name is D-A-C-R-E.
Darcy?
I've always said Darcy. I've heard it pronounced Dacre. I don't know what's right, but Dacre Stoker, or Darcy Stoker, blood descendant, wrote a prequel, Dracula, and a sequel, Dracula the Undead. I have read the prequel. It was very good. We will cover these books at some point. We had them originally as a part of our Dracula coverage, but it was just too much.
And then we saw how long it would be like doing The Stand again.
Yeah, they're full novels. So on top of Dracula, Powers of Darkness, which are both full novels, and these two books, it was too much. We'll do them down the road. Other works by Bram Stoker: The Lady of the Shroud, The Lair of the White Worm.
I really want to read Lair of the White Worm.
Yeah, I've heard things. I want to do that at some point
There's
too.
also a movie adaptation, so.
Yes. And then, there, like I said, there have been countless adaptations. When it was time for Bram to register for a foreign license for the Dracula property, he submitted it late. And because of that, Dracula fell into the public domain.
Oof.
While Bram was still alive.
He used to do like speakings and talks about copyright too, so he was a big proponent of like artist rights.
Which is a shame, and it's terrible for him and his family because they lost out on so much money, but is also probably why this character is
As big as it is.
Yeah, because at the time, like every writer in Hollywood started writing a Dracula movie.
Like, not crap on Darcy's Parade, but there was an unofficial sequel that was called The Undead that was written... God, I used to know the year.
Well, The Undead was the original title of Dracula.
It was also the original title, but someone wrote a sequel and called it The Undead.
Yeah. So today, there are countless adaptations, and the actors who have played Dracula range from Bela Lugosi to Gary Oldman to Leslie Nielsen to Adam Sandler and soon to be Nicolas Cage.
I can't wait. That movie doesn't look like what I was thinking it was going to be, but...
I was upset when I read the plot summary, but then I saw the trailer and I was like,
okay, kind of looks fun.
Yeah, maybe this could be...
It's a take.
Yeah.
I'm willing to watch it.
And that's Renfield, which we will be doing an episode on. Renfield, of course, is the patient from the novel. And this is a movie where he like tries to break up with Dracula and moves to the United States. And Dracula tries to follow him to bring him back into...
I'm going to be honest, I hate how much I like the trailer.
Yeah, because I read the plot synopsis and I was like, oh, this sounds gross. But the trailer was awesome.
Oh, go ahead and come in. No, don't say that.
Because you have to invite a vampire or they can't come in.
And like a lot of people don't do anything with that anymore, and I thought that was great.
No, I thought it was super clever. That was one of the huge things I loved from Salem's Lot.
I really want to do a vampire story where someone gets killed because they have a welcome mat on their their porch.
There's a TV show called What We Do in the Shadows, and there's an episode.
I love that show so much.
It's so good. The episode where like the one guy the one vampire Laszlo he transforms into a bat and animal control gets him.
Bat.
And like they take him to the local like veterinary hospital or whatever like that, and his vampire buddies go to get him, and they get to the door and they're just like, "Hello, can we come in?" And they're just like, he's like, door's open, and he's like, "Yes, but can we come in?" And he's like, I mean, I guess. And then you see they can walk in. Like they spent like 10 minutes trying to get the guy to say yes, you can come in.
That would be a great show to cover too.
All right,
it's really funny.
I've never watched it, but I'm aware of it.
It's The Office, but with vampires.
Sounds
it's
great.
It's phenomenal.
But The Office has vampires.
I haven't seen enough with The Office.
Creed?
No, there's one episode where Jim tricks Dwight into thinking he's a vampire.
Oh, that's right.
They have a bat loose in the office. I don't know. It's really good.
I just remember the episode where you first meet Creed because he's like, and it's like that
like
Halloween episode. Because like I think it's like the first episode.
So
Creed's actually
he's in episodes before that, but that's the first one where he has a speaking role and he's dressed as Dracula.
Yeah,
and Michael tries to fire him.
And they're trying to fire him.
He talks him into firing somebody else. Yeah.
And that's that. Another story in the classic, infallible 3-act structure. Good enough for Aristotle, good enough for The Simpsons.
Mr. Sislak, I have a feeling there's going to be one more act to this story.
Well, I'm not hanging around for that. 4 acts.
Dracula is an epistolary novel, which means that the narrative is related through letters, diary entries, and newspaper articles.
I didn't know there was a word for this.
Also,
now you have
that
to
means
say
it's mine and Daniel's favorite literature device.
Yeah, it's great.
I freaking adore it.
Favorite thing in any survival horror game is getting to find notes. Hidden lore.
Hidden lore. God, how much time did you spend just reading crap in Skyrim?
A lot. You have no clue.
The lusty Argonian maid.
I actually collected books and I made a library in my house.
That's cool.
Somewhere
the DLC with the house, or
somewhere online, I don't remember where, there is somebody who took to Reddit or something and basically wrote out what he imagined to be the entirety of what would be the lusty Argonian maid novel.
I'm doing really well. I basically live on Reddit.
My toe lifts up sometimes.
So like Frankenstein, Dracula is a very significant, maybe the most significant piece of Gothic literature. Unlike Frankenstein, it is not a romance work.
No.
Daniel, can you explain the difference between a Gothic piece of literature and a romantic piece of literature?
Not in a way that'll make me sound smart.
Okay, so
I'll try my best. Romantic literature is very focused on nature.
it glorifies nature,
Yeah.
and it also focuses on common people as opposed to noble people.
And their emotions. It's why we kept calling it melodramatic, but not in a bad way.
Gothic is essentially doom and gloom,
Yeah.
things that focus on negative emotions.
Man, this castle sucks.
Yeah, it obviously Dracula is very gothic, but it doesn't really qualify as a romance novel. One,
It doesn't glorify any sort of nature.
no, Stoker spends almost no time describing the setting.
And the heroes are aristocrats.
Mostly-
not aristocrats, but doctors.
They're mostly wealthy people with the exception of the Harkers, who in the course of the novel inherit a fortune.
Yeah.
But they grow up poor.
I read this novel was actually 3 very different genres. As a person who read it for the first time, the first part is horror. The middle part is more romantic than the other ones, or kind of that time of age, like Pride and Prejudice kind of stuff like that.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
And the last part is almost a pure mystery adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. And honestly, it fits really well to split it up into 3 different parts. And as I was preparing for this, I was kind of thinking, maybe we should have split this into 3 episodes, or at least 2 to do, Jonathan's piece all in one episode and then the rest of it all in one episode. But I mean, it is
What it is.
Yeah,
We're
exactly.
here now, right? They're a protagonist.
When you start reading the book, obviously you're like, oh, this is Jonathan Harker and he's the protagonist. And then you don't hear from him for 200 pages.
What's one of those words deuteragonists?
Yeah.
I don't know the correct one, but I think there's multiple super important people.
I always just called it ensemble.
Mina's super important.
Post Jonathan's stint in the castle, you spend the most time with Dr. Seward.
Yeah.
But obviously you spend a lot of time with Mina and Lucy as well.
And a lot of people spend this entire novel kissing Mina's ass. Not that I'm complaining, just
Well, we're going to circle back
Yeah.
to that because I have a huge thing about that.
I can't wait.
You know what? Fuck it. I'm going to say it now. How much shorter would this book be if you took out all the dick sucking? Literally.
Madam Mina,
I can tell you, it's Powers of Darkness.
So it'd be,
That's 100% what that book is. They took out Mina, and the book is 8 hours shorter.
well, it's not just Mina. It's, them talking about how amazing Lucy is, or Lucy talking about how amazing Arthur is, or them talking about how amazing the other men are.
It cut out, I think, I was mathing it, 6 hours of the book.
I know. It's all just every letter or journal entry just starts with endless compliments.
I guess that's just a British thing. I
It
don't
is.
know.
They're
Van Helsing really wanted some Harker ass, let me tell you.
I don't blame him. Mina's up there.
She's fine.
Yeah, she's great.
If you base her off of the Thalia Guardian of Thraben card, she's very fine.
Oh yeah. Who plays Mina in the Bram Stoker?
Isn't it Winona Ryder?
Oh
Yeah.
I knew that. She's okay.
She also does a horrible British accent. I don't know if she's actually British, but it sounds just as horrible.
She's not. She's American. When I think Winona Ryder, the 3 things that jump out at me are Edward Scissorhands, Mr. Deeds, and she got arrested for shoplifting underwear.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Let's jump into themes. And of course, we're going to start with vampires.
Amazing.
Is there a more influential piece of vampire literature?
Do you want my personal opinion?
No, I want one word that's definitive.
No, this is the most influential.
Okay, great. Moving on.
There's some books that clearly influence this book.
Yeah.
But if you're taking things as a whole, maybe there's 1 or 2 things that kind of get lost in translation across the centuries.
Mm-hmm.
But 9 times out of 10, people are going to be picking up this book before they pick up Carmilla and using it as an influence.
I love Carmilla, and the vampire is very good, but they're not this book.
Yeah, they're going to pick it up before the vampire. They're going to pick it up. The only thing that I think comes close is a recent book, and that's kind of shown some more recent influences, and that's Interview with the Vampire.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that has come close, and even that book owes so much to Dracula.
What about Twilight?
I thought to say that's kind of where I flew in, because like you can argue influence as far as like the original Dracula like narrative itself, but the subgenres that it has kind of
and
pushed
even
onto other
Twilight
people.
spent so much time going, this is how we're not Dracula.
It's like basically trying to disprove how Dracula it is.
Or
To the point where it's obnoxious, but the fact is that's what it's trying to do.
I'm sorry.
Or Vampire Diaries level shit.
I love vampires, and I even love when people try to do something unique with them. But this is the quintessential vampire book, and if you disagree, this is my personal opinion, I think you're wrong.
Yeah, no, I don't think there really is a significant argument. I think you need to acknowledge the influence of Carmilla and the vampire,
but I've gotten a lot of actualities where people are like, Carmilla was written like so many years before. I'm like, yeah, but it's not as influential. I'm sorry, you're wrong.
I mean, is Flash Gordon better than Star Wars? No.
Exactly. That's a great example. I
think the question you could like really put more forth is like, influential is the word, right?
Yeah.
So, it influences people. It makes people want to do something different with the original work that it is. So you can argue, like, you can have, ad hominems, and you can argue about whether the book is good or whether the book isn't. But what you can't disrupt is the fact that the book inspires character, subgenres, various things. Like
we are still getting Dracula adaptations.
If it weren't for this book, we would not have the goddess Mavis.
Fuck.
I have too much porn of her on my phone to dispute that, so
that would be where I'd make my stance. It's just like, you can argue all you want about whether something's better or not, but the fact is, as far as like influences are concerned, I mean, it can all be going back to this.
So obviously vampires existed before Dracula. So let's say Dracula never happens. What would a modern idea of a vampire look without the Dracula novel and the preceding films?
Hellraiser.
Like,
Hellraiser.
If I'm trying to think of it in like a historical
I did say that real southern, didn't I?
Yeah.
And like, assuming nothing picked up Dracula's popularity,
yeah,
I would say they wouldn't be a big part of pop culture. They'd be like, I don't know, what's like something like a satyr? Like, how many things get satyrs these days?
Percy Jackson is pretty huge, and satyrs are a huge part of that.
Okay,
but I see what you're saying.
A golem.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Like, that's what they would be. They'd be something that shows up every once in a while, and people would go to Wikipedia to see what it is.
Also, satyrs are really big in Narnia. I'm sorry.
I think there's people that like there's like a gap to fill, right?
Yeah.
Like there's always something you're going to be like interested in some way, shape, or form.
The mermaids or
they'd be like
the banshees
or sirens.
Sirens, yeah. I mean, they would show up here and there, but they wouldn't be the most iconic. More than werewolves, more than ghosts, more than zombies are kind of but
zombies is arguable these days,
but historically no.
I'd say it's probably more applicable as far like vampires are more applicable because they're human in a sense. Like I think
they were
but in a sense, right?
Yeah,
so there's still like kind of an anthropomorphic kind of nature to it, even if it's not completely human.
And a lot of modern vampire stories focus on that, where they're still people, but they're vampires.
I'm such a monster. I'm so tormented.
Yeah,
right,
that's very like Twilight, Vampire Diaries. What's the show that everybody liked with the vampires?
With the vampires?
Yeah, the
Rosario Vampire?
No,
vampires?
No, it's a television. Maybe
Vampire Diaries.
Maybe I'm thinking of Vampire Diaries. Okay,
I mean that sounds right.
Okay,
I mean, there's just been a lot. It's like zombies. There's so many things now.
Yeah,
but I don't think. And again, I could be wrong, but you'll never be able to prove me wrong.
Honestly, I think it could have been an easy case where like the Wolfman.
Yeah,
could have been easily something that's taken its spot, because it just has to be something interesting enough to be able to overtake it.
I've always been a huge fan of werewolves, but I think you're right that the human characteristic is the important part. Werewolves will never have the place in pop culture that vampires have, because when a werewolf is a werewolf, they're an animal. They're not a person.
Well, I mean, in terms of women, I've met some women that are just like the more animalistic, the better.
Oh yeah.
So there's that too. But again, I think
was 100% ready to fuck Beast as the Beast.
Okay, moving on. All right, so what?
She didn't know you could turn human.
What elements of
Y'all are gonna hear
Stoker's
a high five here? Just a second. Here, high five me. Thank you.
What elements of Stoker's Dracula still exist in mainstream vampire pop culture, and what elements have kind of gone to the wayside?
That one's super complicated because a lot of them kind of wax and wane. Like, you get a lot of
what elements of vampires would like a random 10-year-old know? Like, what Hey, 10-year-old, tell me about vampires and what came from Dracula.
Fangs.
Yeah. Like, something that you don't see a lot until you do is the having to be invited in.
Yeah.
It's-
That's something that's not as big anymore.
Yeah, but, like, you see it in Salem's Lot, you see it in What We Do in the Darkness, or
What We Do in Shadows.
What We Do in Shadows.
Another not big one is having to rest in the soil of your homeland.
Yeah.
And then the big ones,
Fangs, being,
drinking blood,
blinking blood, being tail,
transforming into bats,
transforming bats,
controlling animals.
And even though it's not, like, a giant part of the novel, it's kind of a plot point towards the end, is like drinking the vampire's blood itself doing something to a person.
Yeah.
That comes from Dracula, to my knowledge.
I didn't know, like, which I assume we'll talk about later, but, like, I didn't realize how many different powers he had.
But that's...
Oh, yeah.
Like, he's got a fucking bunch.
He has a page on Versus Battle Wiki just for his novel version.
He's like Superman. There's a new power every other page.
You're fucking making this up, aren't you?
I can throw wolves into weather, and I can transform.
Into mist?
But I cannot cross water.
Water's dangerous.
Oh, that's another one. Like, that doesn't come up in modern things.
That never comes up.
Yeah. He can't cross water of his own will.
A book that I really want us to read sometime is Necroscope, where they give, like, a scientific explanation for it as, like, a joke. And it's like, well, because they came through this area and there was running water, it was dangerous. So that's where the myth came from.
Want to know a fun gaming fact?
What?
The most accurate portrayal of Dracula in the Castlevania series is in Castlevania 64.
Did you get that from the Game Theory episode?
I did.
Yeah.
Yay. 2 high fives.
There's a video I'm going to make him watch after we get through some of these movies, which is The Angry Video Game Nerds, which is the most accurate movie portrayal of Dracula, where he goes through point by point and, like, gives them points.
Okay, so another big theme is foreign invasion or mistrust of foreigners.
Yeah, it's an English person writing the book.
Yeah. Of course, an easy interpretation of Dracula is being mistrustful of a wealthy foreigner who's coming to England, to the United Kingdom, and exerting their influence and spending their money.
I will take your land and marry your women.
This came across to me super hard in this rereading because I just a few weeks ago listened to a podcast about Russian oligarchs who are purchasing real estate in London to hide their money so they don't have to report their wealth to the Russian government and their taxes.
They were doing it in America too.
Yeah, but apparently it's like super bad in London. Like it's a real thing, and it's just like, oh my god, that's exactly what Dracula's doing.
Yeah.
And that's happening like today.
We could write a book where Putin's a vampire.
It wouldn't be that hard. Putin is controlled by vampires. He's a vampire puppet.
Yeah, that's going to be our collaborative book.
He's the Jefferson Davis of vampires.
Yeah.
It'll be called Putin the Punts.
I am Count Putin.
Now I just want to.
I need to stop.
Now I just want to see like Putin is Charlie Brown and Lucy's like holding the football and like, this is Ukraine. Come and kick the football.
But can it be Lucy from the book?
Yeah. And then he comes to kick the Ukraine football and Lucy's just like, yoink, you can't has. And then he goes, well, I look like an idiot. My giant country can't conquer this little country. Well, smaller, not little. All right, another huge theme, sexuality and seduction. Go, Daniel. Feel free to table some of it for Kiss Me, Fat Boy.
I'm going to. I do think it exists in the book. A lot of my hot takes when it comes to Dracula is I think a lot of, like, modern literature experts, I don't know what you would call them, scholars.
Literature scholars.
Sometimes a story is just a story, and a lot of it was just, in my opinion, was probably Bram Stoker going, what would be scary here, or what would be cool?
Okay, settle down, J.R.R. I get it. It's just a ring.
Yeah. I was going for Ben, or
Ben Swallow?
No, fuck.
Ben Hanscom?
Fuck, who was the writer in it?
Ben and Jerry's?
Yeah.
The writer?
Bill and his literature professor.
Stephen King, stop making them all start with the same letter.
Yeah.
Wait, in Salem's Lot or it?
No, it.
I was gonna say
Bill
that's Ben Mears.
Yeah, he's talking about Bill.
Literature professor.
Oh,
sometimes
okay.
a story
All right.
is just a story.
Yeah.
And that's probably my favorite part of it, because that's the part I most agree with. Because a lot of times I'm in college and like my professor's telling me all this stuff, and I'm like, I don't know, dude. I think he just thought vampires were cool. sexuality is in the book. It's more in Powers of Darkness, surprisingly. Like, a lot.
I mean,
Come and sit on my lap.
Yeah.
he had 3 wives in the book. That's the most sexual I got.
But you definitely have... And there is stuff where I'm like, God, this is probably an allegory. I don't know if I'm reading too much into it. Like, you have 3 men exchanging fluid with a woman, but then they're not going to tell the husband that they did it because it might hurt his feelings. Or the fiancé. 4, yeah, because he was the 4th.
Yeah.
Oh, we can't tell him because he believes he's the only one who did it.
Yeah.
And to me, that seems like...
And then
that's kind of obvious.
They tell him 5 pages later.
And then you have, like, the 3 brides, and they're all over Jonathan. And then even Dracula's like, no, I've loved you all.
By the way, here, eat this child.
Yeah, and then he's like seducing Lucy over a period of time, and he's like the 5th dude in there.
Gross.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
There's definitely sex in the book.
Yeah.
But do I think it's as much as some modern scholars are trying to push? Probably not.
I like maybe neither our ensemble cast or footnotes in somebody's love shack.
Like, I definitely think that there's, like, some themes of, like, maybe not infidelity, but being loose, as opposed to Mina, who saved herself for her husband. To me, that seems kind of super clear.
Do you think it's kind of similar to the way that maybe people read into the lesbian aspect of Carmilla
100, like 100%.
Yeah.
I do think there's a little bit of it in there, but a lot of it's like, well, you got to think of that in a cultural context of how, like, women and people expressed emotions to their friends. Like, they're French, they're kissing each other on their cheeks.
Yeah.
And on the lips, and it's the romantic period where everyone is being all melodramatic and expressing their huge emotions.
Yeah.
That's my sex
Also-
take on Dracula.
Also, Carmilla was a fucking predator, not a...
Yeah, that was my big hot take. Is this is not romantic? I don't know how people have interpreted it as that.
Because it is 2 women and it is sexual, but...
Yeah.
Faith is another huge theme.
So big.
Not just faith in God, but also faith in your family and your friends. There's a very... And I didn't write this down, but found family is a huge theme in this book. Both the group of characters that we find, but also outside of that, like Jonathan and Mina are found family. The Hawkins, the Lord who died...
Van Helsing is the Piccolo of the group, and everyone else is Gohan.
Yes, exactly. And we'll talk more about that as we go on to characters.
Yeah.
And then vampirism as a disease. One of the things I came across in my research is a common reading is that vampirism is representative of the Victorian fear of plagues and epidemics. Because if you're not familiar with 19th century London, it was a fucking dirty, nasty place. People literally took their pee and shit and threw it out the window into the streets. Rats everywhere, bugs everywhere.
You hear that, people? The past isn't always better.
No. It was a dirty...
This was literally 5 days ago.
It was a dirty, disgusting place where diseases ran rampant because of the way that people lived. This is a little bit of a tangent.
I got one after you, so...
It might be the same one. One of my favorite ways that this has been explained to me is in James Clavell's Asian Saga novels.
It's the same man.
Both the main characters of Shogun and Taipan
What do you mean you wipe your ass?
trying to explain to other Europeans how the Asian way of life is so much cleaner because they clean themselves. They take a bath every day. They don't throw their shit in the streets.
What do you mean you want me to wipe and take a bath? You just put perfume. Smelling is what people are.
Yeah, it's... Father, I can't wipe my ass.
I'm so happy. You made my night.
Your first mate told me I have to wipe my ass.
We have to read these books now.
He's gonna hate them because it's all just political intrigue. We'll get there. That's another thing. Okay.
Hef, thoughts?
I mean, I feel like it's important to wipe your ass. As far as political intrigue, I mean, that plus wiping ass really does kind of seem to be a symbol I could kind of get behind.
Okay.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Let's go to characters.
I'm ready.
And of course, we're going to start with our titular character. And characters is going to take a while because, like, every character deserves a little bit of a conversation. Let's start with Hef because Daniel's been talking a lot.
Yeah, I talked so much. I went on a tangent. I'm ready.
Hef, what are your thoughts on Count Dracula?
He needs to be in more of the book.
You need to read Powers of Darkness.
So I have a quote that I think, like, that really kind of rang with me. So the quote is, "Once again, welcome to my house. Come freely, go safely, and leave a bit of happiness you bring."
What a bunch of bullshit.
That's a fucking lie. But
that was a fucking lie.
That was a fucking lie. But I did find it to be a very impressive quote. Like, I think it's probably my favorite quote from
This
the
book is filled with impressive
It's
quotes.
very quotable.
Yeah.
It is very quotable.
My favorite Dracula quote is, "What devil or witch was ever so great?"
So I think it's interesting that, like, because to me, this is where the influence comes in, is the Dracula character himself. And really, when you read the book itself, he's not in it a whole lot.
No, not
like,
really.
He's really only in it for that first part, and he's, like, kind of sprinkled in through the middle.
And then the last 5 pages.
And then the very last part of the book. So I think, like, that's, like, because Dracula's character, I think, is really so influential, because, as we were discussing earlier, really because of just the little amount of time you spend with him, but you're constantly fascinated by what he has to say.
Less is more sometimes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Villains don't always have to be on every page. Sauron in The Lord of the Rings takes no plot action whatsoever.
One of these days, when I finally start helping edit these, I'm going to start doing like a little bing every time he brings up Lord of the Rings.
We can do a bingo card.
That'd be great.
We can do it like a podcast bingo card where
You do Lord of the Rings, and I bring up like a Soul series.
Yeah.
But I liked how captivating he was.
Oh,
like
yeah, I agree.
that's I think the biggest thing I took from the book was, like, I just really enjoyed Dracula as, like, a character, because everything he says is very captivating, even if it's not true. Especially if it's not true. You find everything he says very captivating.
Did you read it, or did you do audiobook?
I did. This one was weird because I did both simultaneously.
Okay.
I would listen to it, and then I would, like, have the book in my hand, reading it as I'm listening.
I just think
to
every
it.
time someone did an impersonation, because, you know, like, Jonathan Harker does his impersonation of Dracula, or whoever does their impersonation of it, I always thought whoever was doing it did a good job when I listened to it this time.
I got the Amazon Classics version, which is, like, it's free. It's not real thing. Now, the guy that does it does a very good Dracula. Everything else is kind of only, like, okay.
Yeah.
in the Audible edition, the guy who plays Jonathan Harker is Simon Vance, and he did. I have on Audible a complete collection of Sherlock Holmes novels and short stories, and he reads all of them.
That sounds great. I might use some of my credits for that.
It's one credit.
It's one credit?
It's one credit.
I know what I'm using my credit on.
Yeah, it's the Simon Vance one. It's outstanding.
Okay.
I love it. Love Dracula. Love him as a character. This happened both times I went through this book, where, of course, like you're supposed to, I picture myself as Jonathan Harker, and both times I'm like, oh, we gotta please the Count. We gotta seem like a good house guest. We gotta do what the Count wants us to do. And then I'd catch myself like, no, he's a fucking monster. I'm like, no, the Count wants us to come out and eat dinner. We gotta go out and eat dinner with the Count. Like, no, Ryan, stop. He's the bad guy. Oh, yeah, I forgot.
This is why I would die in a horror movie, because I'm sitting there, like, reading this and listening to this going, man, this guy seems cool.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that goes back to my thing where, like I said, he's captivating, especially when he's lying.
He's giving me wine and food and wants me to hang out in his castle with him. This guy's great.
Oh, you can leave. Don't stay an hour more than you want to. The door's right there.
There's
you can
some
leave.
wolves.
There are wolves outside the door, but you can go.
That was really funny. That's such a great scene.
Yeah, I love it. I love it
So
a lot.
sinister.
Okay, any other thoughts on the Count, Daniel?
We could probably fill a whole podcast with the Count, so we might as well move on.
Yeah, and he's going to come up as we go. Okay, and of course, we're going to go with the Harkers, and we're going to start with Jonathan. Real quick, before we get into all these other characters, I love this ensemble of characters. And as I was going through this, I was trying to, like, pick a favorite, and I couldn't. I got it down to 3. And for me, if I had to do a top 3 characters in no particular order, it's Jonathan Harker, Mina Harker, and Dr. John Seward. Daniel, who are your top 3 Dracula characters?
Mina, Dracula, and Jonathan, and that's the order.
Hef.
Mina, I loved Philip Morris.
love Morris. He's great.
That's a good answer.
In the book I was reading,
they're all good.
in the audio version I was listening to, they made him a Yankee, and he's just like,
he's literally just.
let me
Bram
tell
Stoker
you
thought
something
Americans were.
here, son. We won't be dealing with this vampire tweets anymore. Like, it was great. Like, which
You know
won me
what
over
we
some-
should bring? There are some Winchesters.
Yeah, like that.
Especially if there are wolves.
Yeah, and
He's not wrong. Those are great guns.
yeah, no, Dracula was captivating. I liked Mina a lot, but I don't know, like Philip Morris just like kind of got me.
A Winchester repeating rifles in like my top 10 gunstone.
I love he's just immediately just like, you want me to kill stuff? I can kill stuff.
I'll shoot that giant bat.
I appreciated at the end of the book that they named him after, like,
Yeah, that was
Quincy.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna get to Philip Morris, and I have some thoughts. All right. So Jonathan Harker, he's like, to me, of like all the like literary characters, he's maybe like one of the easiest to empathize with and put yourself in his shoes. He also, and this is part of why I like him so much, he just seems like Dr. Watson to me.
He kind of seems like the dude who's introduced so that you know what everything else is going on.
Yeah, he's the device,
The everyman.
for you to put yourself in the story so that you can gaze on the spectacle of the other characters. This being Dracula and Sherlock Holmes, it's Sherlock Holmes. You're Watson, and you're there with Sherlock.
And I do think that's what that was all on purpose. Mm-hmm. And I think it's masterfully done.
But also, like, to his credit, he's also just brave as shit.
Yeah.
He doesn't, like, I would have laid down and died in that situation.
I would have fucked the vampire woman and died and then been a vampire.
But no, I love when everybody else reads his diary and they're like, scaling that wall was quite a feat, and then you did it again.
I can't wait for you to see Keanu Reeves be Jonathan.
Oh my god, I didn't even know that.
I can't believe you didn't know that.
I didn't know that. I
I'm
mean,
so happy.
I may have known it at one point and forgot, but
Anthony Hopkins is
Van Helsing.
Helsing.
I think I knew that.
I do like Jonathan as like a plot device. Or not a plot device, but like more of an empathy stick, I guess.
Yeah.
It's
I like that phrase, empathy stick.
Like, you're just supposed to be there as like the general person.
I'm gonna
like,
beat you with my empathy stick.
Being there and feeling Dracula out.
As I was talking about Jonathan, I made myself bleed on accident.
That's hot.
Motherfucker, you can't just say that.
I was playing with a scab and I cut it. Now it's like, oh my god, it's like the scene where Jonathan accidentally cut himself by shaving. And
I might have to start bringing you fidget toys too.
I'm gonna lick it.
I found that I've been trying to tell you about that Game of Thrones squeezy.
There's a Game of Thrones?
Yeah, it's right in front of you.
Is that the head?
Ooh!
Yeah, I finally found it. I was going to give it to you.
Is that
There.
Jon Snow?
I don't know. It's a Game of Thrones guy.
No, this is Pedro Pascal.
Oh, that's the guy who gets his head smashed in, isn't
Yeah.
Is Pedro Pascal in Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
it? He is.
Wow.
He's a prince.
Yeah, he's great.
Oh, wah, wah, oh, wah, wah.
My dad just gave me his Disney Plus, so I'm getting
Have
ready.
you played,
right now.
Did you play the second one? Like The Last of Us? Just
I
fun
didn't
fact.
finish the first one.
Oh,
Ugh.
is that what you're
I was not a
referring to?
fan. No.
What are you talking about then?
The Mandalorian.
Oh, fuck. Never mind. I'm sorry.
But right now, what's airing is Bad Batch Season 2, which means my family gets to listen to my Omega impression for the next 15
I'm so
weeks.
happy. Will you secretly record it for me?
I did. We watched the season premiere last night, and I'm just like, Hunter, Wrecker, tick, tick, please tick.
It just send me their reaction so I can make.
Oh, they
ringtones.
hate it. They fucking hate it.
Beck's gonna start calling me and be like, come do something about your friend.
He's so bad.
We're on Mina now.
Yeah, let's move to Mina.
I kiss her ass just as much as everyone else in this book. So
I have a coworker who named her cat Mina after this character.
if there's if I ever have children on accident, there's a chance that she would be named Mina.
I think that
I like the idea that you have it on accident and then you get the choice still. That's good for you.
Yeah.
It's good that you want to be a part of the kid's life.
I think she's just so good.
It's a pedestal.
Yeah, I mean and I love how the whole book, her and Lucy both are, well, with the difficulties I have as a woman, I can still do this.
Yeah.
But she's more capable than pretty much any other character in the book.
Everything I've ever listened to about this book always mentions yeah, all these dudes go, we can't worry this woman about it, but then they kiss her ass the rest of the book every time she solves a problem.
What I wanted to say is she and Lucy are both super self-deprecating about their gender,
Yeah.
but Mina specifically is more... I think she's morally superior to the rest of the characters, and she's just more intelligent and more capable, and she figures shit out more quickly than Van Helsing does.
I agree.
Yeah, she's outstanding.
I think she's probably, like, if you had to, like, give, like, the list of them, like, she's probably the most self-aware character of all of them that are in there. Like, gender is not really a validity for, like, the actual story that she's trying to actually be a part of. She's just trying to contribute and do her best, but also realizes that she can do things, and she does do things, which is... As far as the rest of the characters in this book, like, they're, you know, you kind of have that, you know, harumph, you know, kind of gruffy, you know, almost man-like nature of things, where she really does kind of take, like, her resources and uses them as her own. And while she is overly commended for it, I think for somebody who is writing of that age, like, I think it is to be commended. It's kind of like with Mary Shelley during her time, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So Mina, I think if they would have let her be in charge instead of Van Helsing, they would have killed Dracula in London.
I think they wouldn't have had to wait for Van Helsing to come back from wherever the hell to do research on vampires.
I'm going back to Amsterdam again. Well, hold on. I got to go back to Amsterdam for the seventh time.
I do love Van Helsing, but that's pretty funny.
Every time he left, I was sitting there just being like, dude, what is so good on the other end of that boat? Yeah. I mean, there's got to be something.
They have a library that specifically mentions vampires, apparently.
I mean, I've never been to Amsterdam, so I can't.
He's big on the reefer.
So, this is just a small aside, right? I want to go on a
I'll be the judge of that.
I've recently rewatched Helsing Ultimate, and the Helsing organization is in it, but it's led by a bunch of British people. I'm like, shouldn't you be, like, Swedish if you're the Helsing organization? Right? Like, I'm not wrong. He wasn't British in the book.
Even Hotel Transylvania got that right.
Yeah. But that was, like, my big complaint about Helsing, the series, was they made him British.
Quick thoughts on Hugh Jackman, Van Helsing.
I am not a fan of that movie.
I haven't seen it since it was in theaters. I don't remember.
A lot of people like it because it's purposefully cheesy, but that's the reason I didn't like it. I wanted it to take itself like 10% more seriously than it does.
I saw it when it came out, and I don't remember anything about it. Have you seen that one?
I have. Yeah. I watch it at least once a year.
I'm glad you enjoy it. I want things to bring people joy.
You know what Hugh Jackman movie I hate?
Logan?
Australia.
Okay.
It's 3 hours of nothing.
It's
3 hours of nothing.
It's so shitty. Did you see that with me and Chad?
I think so.
Oh my god, it was so
3
bad.
hours of nothing.
The only funny part is when he shoots a kangaroo just to get a reaction out of Nicole Kidman.
3 hours of nothing could also be the name of our podcast.
Yeah. That's very true.
Oh my god.
Why are you limited to just a podcast? Just tell me it's how I live my life.
All right, Mina's going to come up more as we go. So let's go to Lady... No, she's not a lady. That's wrong. Okay. Lucy Westenra. And I'll tell you, I had a very negative opinion of Lucy at the beginning. But by the end of it, I had a better opinion of her. And the thing that impressed me about Lucy was her last journal entry where she's just basically like, I'm going to fucking die now. And my mom just died. I'm about to fucking die, but I'm going to go face it like a woman. Fuck you, everybody. I love you, Mina. Bye.
Here's a note. I hope it helps. I've already talked a lot about Lucy when it comes to, like, the symbolism I actually buy into with the book. Mm-hmm. As a character, I think she works as, like, a good, like, I can never say this word, juxtaposition to Mina.
Yeah.
To see her in more adaptations.
Is she in Bram Stoker's?
Yeah. She has the best costume in that whole movie.
Ooh, I'm excited.
Yeah.
I think Lucy represents my least favorite part of the book. It's interesting because, like, as I said earlier, like, this book to me really seems more like 3 separate books that were kind of, like, put together. And I find to be the middle portion where they're kind of having the socialite way of life. There's a bunch of suitors, things like that. I was just less interested in that. Now, interestingly, I can read an entire book that's built like that. One of my favorite books, like I've said before, is like a girl with pearl earring. Mm-hmm. It's all based in that kind of like 1700s lady in waiting kind of like time era.
In my top 5 books is Pride and Prejudice. So
yeah,
if the book is set up where that's the focal point, that's what you're expecting, that's what you're going to get when you're reading it, then it's fine.
So for you, it's like a weird meat in the sandwich.
It's not even just a meat. It's like somebody put too much lettuce on my sandwich.
Okay.
That's my second favorite part of the novel.
Well, I just like that there's some diverse opinions here, so.
I think it's just, to me, it just doesn't match up with the first part that I have.
I mean, it's very different.
And I think that's what kind of I shouldn't say weirds me out, that's not the right word.
I'm the Quincy Morris in like 3 different women's Lucy's, so.
Third choice.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I just find it was the part that I struggled with the most, and I think it's really just because with the stigma of Dracula, of course, being that I have never really had a lot of experience with the original work, so it was kind of the part of the book that I was the least prepared to read.
Yeah, because it's the part of the book. Well, I was going to say it's the part of the book that has the least to do with Dracula, but I don't think that's really true.
It reads kind of slower than a lot of the other parts.
I think, and we talked about this, I think it's the one part that has the least amount to do with the themes that it's inspired.
Okay.
I think that's kind of where I fall on that one. It was the part of the book I was the least prepared to read.
I like it because one of my favorite, if not my favorite relationship in the book is Helsing and Seward. And that section is really them being Sherlock and Watson about this whole thing. And Lucy's case, them exploring it, them getting involved, them staying up with her, them putting out the garlic flowers, and her mom was like, "Oh, those terrible garlic flowers! I got rid of them." I love that whole part. I agree that it's a little out of place with the rest of the novel, but aside from the first Jonathan Harker's first piece, that's my favorite part of the book.
I believe on a second read, my opinion will be different. Mainly just because, again, this was my first read of it.
Yeah.
So
my opinion on it's sort of middling. So I'm like, it's good, but
I'll just say of the 3 parts. To me, the 3 parts of the book, it was my least favorite of the 3.
My least favorite of the 3 parts is the final part.
Yeah. Also,
and I can appreciate that because there are parts of it that I didn't like.
Yeah,
which were kind of fleshed out a little more that weren't.
Now we're gonna go into the suitors.
The suitors.
And we're gonna start with my guy, the spurned lover, but still stuck right there in the friend zone.
We call them orbiters nowadays.
No, he is not an orbiter.
Does he not orbit around Lucy this whole book?
Yeah, but isn't an orbiter someone who orbits with the intention of getting in there at some point?
Yeah, usually it's... You're right. I just wanted to make that joke so bad.
Okay. I've said on previous episodes, Dr. John Watson is one of my favorite fictional characters of all time. Harker is like the Watson to Dracula, Sherlock Holmes, but even more so, Seward is the Watson to Van Helsing's Sherlock Holmes. And I love their investigation of Lucy's sickness. I love his journaling, and I love Renfield and how he ties his study of Renfield into what's going on with Lucy and eventually to Dracula. And I think his journal entries, aside from maybe Jonathan Harker's, are the most entertaining. In the Audible edition, he's voiced by the guy who plays Nightcrawler in X-Men, and it's great, and I love it, and I will suck John Seward's dick every day if he lets me, which he probably will because Lucy told him no.
Jilted lover is more often, the case for someone to be picking up the pieces.
I like him because I've been working in a mental health hospital for so long, so I kind of just like that part of the book.
I was wondering because the whole time, I'm listening to it, I'm like, oh my god, I love this, I love this, I love this. And I wonder if Daniel is going to hate this because of maybe it's not accurate, or
I think it was a decent representation, at least based off of my history of psych, off of what it was like back then. It's not what it's like now, of course,
because I love that portion of it.
Yeah,
but you weren't as big a fan because
I was I've never seen a person act like that, and I've been doing this for 6 years.
Yeah. But of course, and I've worked in a nursing home, but I've never worked in your field. So
yeah. But I honestly kind of like it. I appreciate it for the the history of it, and I really just love his interactions with Renfield.
Yeah, they're great.
I think that is a very strong part of the book. It's a good dynamic, and just getting to he's I actually feel like I'm with a doctor trying to study what a patient's logic is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what? He's collecting flies and now spiders and now, oh, so it's life. It's just kind of, it's fun to read.
He's absorbing souls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, that's great.
Yeah, I think Seward is definitely the most cerebral character in the novel.
That's a great word for this.
I mean, there's so much more thought processes that goes into his journal entries.
Yeah.
Like, there's much more depth of thought, whereas everything else, like, that these people talk about are more like feelings that they have, and very much, like, almost existential in a way.
He feels like a doctor.
Whereas John Seward writes and acts like a doctor. Everything's much more physical, cerebral, very like kind of it's very.
What do they call what he records on? A sonograph?
Phonograph.
If you'd have asked me 10 seconds before that,
I
would have been able to tell you what that is.
I thought it was interesting that they mentioned that it was originally on that before it was typed up by Mina or written up by Mina.
Phonograph.
Yeah, okay. I just thought that was cool.
An iPhone 8.
And
what is the symptoms of Renfield?
Anytime I see a phonograph and something else that I'm like watching or playing, I immediately think of this.
Yeah. And I meant to Google it 100 times, but like the wax coils that they're stored on.
Yeah.
Let's do it right now.
Yeah, what's it gonna hurt, right?
Yeah.
I love whenever Google assumes what you're gonna type next and some of the weird shit you get.
It's that right there.
Oh, yeah, okay. That's cool.
Cylinder.
Yeah. It looks like a half a beer bottle.
To me, it looks like peanut butter.
I only know that because I've seen them in other things.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool.
You get to see them in Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Right. You're building up this movie.
Yeah.
More thoughts on John?
No.
John?
It's actually why I really like this novel, is because I feel like while every character is like united in the same goal, I do feel like they're all very different. Yeah. And whenever they write, you do take a very different perspective from all of them. Seward's, I would argue that Seward's is probably the most unique among all of them because of the level of thought that goes into his writings and his scribings.
He's the hardest one to convince that there's a vampire.
Yeah.
He also shares the same last name as my second favorite Secretary of State.
I love you, Ryan.
My second favorite Secretary of State. The only person I fucking know that ranks Secretary of State.
That's an important position.
It is an important.
So is missionary, but we don't talk about it that often.
Well, I'm not religious, so I wouldn't know.
Oh my god, that's a great joke.
All right. Our second suitor, the successful suitor, maybe I should have put him
last, because you got to get in there last.
Formerly Arthur Holmwood, but would become Lord Godalming. My goodness. Basically, this is the character who uses his name to throw his weight around and get people to do stuff for them.
Probably my least favorite character.
He all got the De Niro's.
I don't think he's bad necessarily.
I don't think any of them are bad.
But he's the least interesting of the bunch.
Yeah.
But he's also like the character that Lucy says yes to, that makes John Seward the spurned lover. It's important.
Yeah.
And it's also important for Philip Morris's character that Lucy doesn't say yes to him, because it favorably reflects on John and Philip that, they still do all this shit for Lucy that they do when she said no to them. So Arthur's character is necessary.
Yeah.
I think it's necessary for two reasons. Well, the biggest reason I think it's necessary is because Bram Stoker sat there and thought to himself, this journey's going to require money.
Yeah.
And I need somebody who has money. So he makes them. Actually, Arthur is kind of one of the reasons that I don't like Lucy as much.
Because she
chose the least interesting.
She chose the least interesting guy, but the richest one. And to me, that's just
like, true to form.
Yeah. I mean, arguably,
he does seem like a nice guy.
Yeah.
I don't dislike him. Like, I don't dislike his character at all, but I also have no real, affinity towards it either.
He's also probably the one of the three that would have spent the most time at home with her.
Yeah.
Because Philip would have been out there being a cowboy, and John is always working with his patients, but Arthur would be happy to just sit down and have tea with her every day.
Philip be like, come back with me to Louisiana.
He's from Texas.
I don't remember.
You ever shot a...
He'd tell her everything's bigger in Texas, including my Winchester.
I feel like he's the least fleshed out, but I also feel like he's more supposed to be...
I love that I know I'm skipping ahead, but Morris has a Bowie knife, and everyone else has like a Croca or
He's
something.
the Yankee.
I have a Bowie knife, but it's not in here.
Yeah.
I meant to get it out for this. He's also one of all the characters we've listed, aside from Dracula, he's one of the 3 characters who doesn't keep a diary or write any letters.
Yeah, he's like, that's not a knife. This is a knife.
Philip Morris. Is this just Teddy Roosevelt?
Yeah.
Basically.
That's exactly how I picture him in my head.
Because I half listened to the audiobook, like the Yankee accent that the person
Will
who's reading
Smith.
it get it is very, very, very Yankee. So, like, basically I just imagined Matthew McConaughey the whole time.
I picture Teddy Roosevelt.
Have you ever wandered the hills and thought to yourself, I need me a tin roof?
Professor Van Helsing.
Solid character. I do not think he's the best in the book.
No, but he is very good. And I love that he is strictly open to like any idea if it can be explored through trial, error, fact. Like
No, yeah, I love that. I think he's super iconic.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, he's been adapted almost as many times as Dracula.
Yeah.
More so than any other character in this book. He's the one who's been portrayed as...
Characters' names will be changed, switched around, or they will be cut out before Van Helsing.
Yeah, I mean, that includes Harker, Jonathan, Mina, like it.
Yeah.
Based on this, like, different subgenres that have really spawned from it, like, I think this was the character I was most surprised by reading this book, because that one, like you all said, has, like, a following. And the fact that this is the core reference from it
It's neat to see how it evolved.
was interesting, because I was just like, I wasn't at all expecting, like, kind of a professor-like entity that, like, was more...
He's like a skip and a holler from being a dirty old man.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
He's Master Roshi in Dracula.
It's funny because, like, modern adaptations, he's always, like, a badass.
He's a vampire
hunter.
hunting badass. I throw stakes from 30 yards.
And a lot of those, like, stereotypes come from the Universal monster movies. Bela Lugosi Dracula, Van Helsing is very truly adapted from the novel. He's just a professor.
Yeah, I'm a professor and I know things.
So I'd be interested
Amsterdam is great.
I'd be interested to do some more research and see where, like, that idea of Van Helsing came from.
Have you guys been to Munich? I want to go there.
No, but I'd like to. And our last character, but not our least character, Renfield.
Amazing.
It's hard. It's hard to explain, like, how important Renfield is, because he's like, plot wise, you could actually maybe take him out and the plot itself wouldn't change, but in terms of, like, themes and exploring those themes and just, like, some of the more interesting parts of the novel, he is critical.
I agree. That's exactly my take.
I liked his sections more than I liked Lucy's. But I think that was more along because I just thought Renfield was an interesting character, like, by himself. Like, Lucy is, to me, is a plot device for a lot of this. Like, it's more like the gathering, like, to,
of the team.
Yeah, I mean, in your aspect, it would be like the gathering of the fellowship, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's how the team is assembled is Lucy's death. Whereas Renfield is less of a plot device and, to me, more of just an extension of the horror that Dracula actually has amongst him.
Can I have a kitten?
No.
A cat.
I
A
just
large
no.
cat.
I think
That's actually where the phrase eating came from, is this novel.
I 100% believe this. It's canon now. It's Dracula canon.
Kill you all! I'll drive you crazy, and I'll kill you all! I'm every nightmare you ever had. I am your worst dream come true. I'm everything you ever were afraid of.
So let's move on to scary shit. And for scary shit, I have a very simple question, which I tend to ask in scary shit. Is this novel scary?
I think parts of it hold up. If I had to, like, rank it on, like, a scary meter, it's probably like a 4.
I'm not being kept awake by this book.
Yeah.
However, what scares me is how I put myself in Harker's place, and I feel like I need to please the Count by doing what he wants to do. The scary parts for me are the exploration of the castle, the idea of home intruders coming into your bedroom while you're asleep. But in terms of, like, comparing it to other books we've read, particularly It, parts of The Stand, parts of The Mist. Like, it's not...
This is probably my hot take. I think Phantoms is even scarier.
There are parts of Phantoms that are pretty scary.
I think the Demeter still holds up for me.
Yeah, the Demeter is kind of freaky. Because that's like the one part where Dracula just lets loose on people.
And like, just the thought of being isolated on a ship and people are disappearing one after the other, or they're dying one after the other.
There's shit you can do about it.
Yeah, like what are you... And then the last dude just has to like string himself up onto his post.
Yeah.
And then a ghost ship just shows up in your town.
Them sitting down there with, what do they call it? In the cemetery? Like, to stake Lucy. I found that scene really unnerving.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, cause like there's this like tension, right? Like as you're down there with, like, you know what's gonna happen, like you're there with it, but like you kind of put yourself in there. It's like we're fucking sitting in a graveyard, waiting for something, and it's like, even the most calm, rational, like with Seward, because I think that's told from Seward's perspective, and like he's sitting there just being like, this is really goofy, but this is really unnerving.
And then a dead person shows up.
And then it's just like, and you're like, oh God, stake it.
Okay, so two-part question, and we're going to go around the circle. We'll start with Daniel. What do you think would be most scary about this book to a modern audience? And what do you think would have been most scary to a 19th century reader? Daniel?
Okay, modern audience, the idea of this, just a man completely domineering women. You have, like, him force-feeding Mina blood and sneaking in and taking advantage of Lucy every night. I think that idea could get under a lot of people's skin.
And the old-timey folks?
Just a fucking undead dude shows up. What do you mean he's not alive but not dead? What witchcraft is this?
Mr. Hef?
Well, sexually transmitted diseases are a thing, and sucking anybody's blood probably these days is not the best idea.
No.
So as far as a modern audience, it's just like, oh God, she's licking it. Oh God.
My Craigslist post is like, before we meet up, I need to know whose blood you have sucked and who has sucked your blood.
In fact, if you could just run a talk screen while we're on this date, that would be great. Yeah.
Drug and disease free, please.
Yes. As far as 19th, like old-timey stuff, probably most of it. Yeah, I keep thinking back
the
like
whole book.
I mean, basically,
yeah.
Because I mean, back then, I mean, you know, we're so oversaturated with culture in terms of like horror and just really everything as a rule. It's got to be pretty heavy to shock you anymore. Whereas back in the 19th century, I mean, what did you have to do for entertainment as far as means outside of your own mind?
Go to church
and die.
I mean, yeah, you read, right?
You read the newspaper, and you went to church,
and that like movies have kind of, to me, tamed the idea of fear.
Yeah,
because there's very few things scarier than what your own mind makes. So if you're reading this in the 19th century and the fear is elevated to the point where you're almost not having any fear as far as like something supernatural, a book like this could very, very much like get you on edge.
So for me, for a modern audience, and I like that we all have different answers, specifically for Jonathan and Arthur, is that someone you love who is young and healthy succumbs to some random bullshit and it dies. Like,
yeah, that's good.
Lucy is young, beautiful, healthy woman who's ready to experience the rest of her life, and then some random bullshit happens and she's fucking dead.
And she's dead.
She's dead. And the same thing would have happened to Mina had the events of the novel not progressed as they would have. It's just like, it's just shit, because these are young, good people, young married couples and engaged couples who have their whole lives ahead of them, and shit gets fucked up by some fucking monster, and it just fucking makes me mad. How many beers have I had?
4.
Okay. All right. And then for an old audience, I think both of what you said was correct. So say something different. I do think...
Narrate those thought processes, my guy. You can do it.
I do think that something that Daniel has brought up a few times is that Dracula representing a wealthy power from a foreign country is something that, you know, your common person from, 19th century Europe would have been afraid of, because this is not quite to, the nationalism era that led to World War. But we're getting there. to the point where country is more important. People in our country are more important. The lives of English children are more important than the lives of German children or French children or Transylvania children. We're getting to that point that leads to World War I. And the idea of like this wealthy oligarch from another country coming in to the United Kingdom and throwing their weight around by just because of the fucking money they have and the title they have in front of their name, definitely something that I think would have been threatening to people of that age. But it still happens because Russia, what we talked about earlier.
I like that he went deep on his, and then like you asked me, what's the scariest thing about this? AIDS. AIDS is scary.
AIDS is scary.
AIDS is scary. I said dead people were scary.
I think we're on to Kiss Me Fat Boy.
That's where you're wrong. We're on top 5.
Oh no. Oh no.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You fucking waited till I came here.
Oh no. It's been so long.
Yeah, I know. I waited specifically for this top 5 VILFs. Vampires I'd like to fuck.
Okay.
For Kiss Me Fat Boy.
Set the timer for 5. If this is your first top 5, we spring them on each other. What the person who springs it gets however long they want to come up with their list. The rest of us get 5 minutes. So we are stopping the recording and setting a timer for 5 minutes, and we'll be right back.
Kiss me, fat boy.
All right, we are back with our top 10 VILFs.
Top 5. Don't you fucking make it 10.
It's 10 now.
I'm sorry, it's a top 5 VILFs, which are vampires I'd like to fuck.
So I guess we'll just do like each of our 5s and then go around.
Yeah, go ahead.
My number 5 is Sierra Victoria from Hellsing Ultimate.
I hate her.
Big titted police girl who loses an arm.
I hate police girl. Have?
Number 5 is Celine from Underworld, just because Kate Beckinsale.
Oh, that's so good. That's such a good answer.
I haven't sat through any of those yet.
Doesn't matter. It's Kate Beckinsale. She's pretty.
Mavis's mom.
That's your number 5.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
You're number 4.
Soren Markov.
He's pretty. He's a pretty guy.
I want him to take me to new planes.
It's so funny.
You want him to ignite your spark?
Yeah. I got a million.
It's so funny because my next one was Olivia Valdarin.
Make my life total 10. My number 4 is Lily Munster.
Okay.
They're the MILFs.
My number 3 is Lady Dimitrescu from Resident Evil Village. I want 9-foot-tall vampire mommy to step on my face.
I knew that was going to be in there somewhere.
Had to be.
My number 3 is the 3 Dracula wives from the Van Helsing film that we talked about earlier.
Okay, I like it. I accept it.
And mine is Lucy Westenra. Cut my head off and shove my mouth full of garlic.
And my number 2 is Lenore from Netflix's Castlevania, because I want her to put me on a leash and drag me around as her slave.
And my number 2 is Lenore from King of the Hill, because she must have been a succubus. I'm sorry. No, she's not.
My number 2 is Marceline from Adventure Time.
Okay.
I hope my number 2 is one of your guys' number 1, because this is... On principle, I had to make my number 1 my number 1, but in terms of like actual sex appeal, I think my number 2 is my number 1. I didn't know this character had a name until I just Googled it. But her name is
Santa Nico Pandemonium.
Selma Hayek from Dusk Till Dawn.
And our number 1, so is everybody ready?
Mine's Mavis.
Nicolas Cage.
You're wrong. You're wrong and I hate you.
My number 1 is Santica Pandemonium.
Okay, good.
Because Selma Hayek.
Because Selma Hayek.
Oh my god.
Nicolas Cage is mine. I feel like
I never wanted to have a foot fetish so bad in my life than when I watched that movie.
Do you not?
No,
I do not.
I've seen my feet. I'm just not a fan.
Size 16, size 16, size 16.
That was our introduction to Kiss Me Fat Boy, and now back to your regular scheduled programming.
No, I think that was all of Kiss Me Fat Boy.
Actually, yeah, with what you have written down was your ultimate vampire fantasy.
So yeah, my ultimate vampire fantasy is a 3-way with Mavis and Selma Hayek from From Dusk Till Dawn.
My actual biggest vampire fantasy is probably just getting Mavis pregnant, so...
Yeah, I want to be Johnny. That's my life goal.
My fantasy is not anything to do with Mavis.
You're so weird.
Is it getting stepped on by this vampire lady with her massive feet? What are we talking about?
Her feet aren't even that massive. It's just like she just sticks her foot in his mouth in the movie. That's
yeah.
Yeah. And,
you get a little bit of toe jam, you get a snack.
I mean, it's just not for me. My ultimate vampire fantasy is... I mean, it's basically just Salma Hayek.
Yeah. My ultimate vampire fantasy is to not be killed by vampires.
Oh my god, are you Stephen King? No, I'm Dean Koontz. Oh.
Kings and the Koontz of Dracula. Daniel, your king.
The Demeter.
My king is Jonathan Harker and the entire first portion of the book.
Mine is the same as Ryan's.
And Daniel, your Koontz.
I would like more Dracula.
Mine is... I don't even think it's bad, but I think it's fine for me, but I could see it like being a turnoff for some people who are trying to read the book, and it's the overflow of compliments and the excessive dick sucking.
Mina, you have the biggest dick of us all.
Well, she does. She does.
I mean, there's enough for him to suck. I mean, clearly.
Yeah.
Multiple mouths.
And Mr. Hef.
I mean, it's just that little bit of section with Lucy. I found that to be the most mundane of the whole book.
Doesn't work for you.
It just
That's fair.
doesn't.
That's fair. I think it'll be less offensive on a second read, but it's still a fair opinion.
Rankings.
It's my number 2. Comparing Dracula to Frankenstein, I think they hold almost the same place in culture. However, I think Dracula just hits a little bit more of my buttons.
Yeah.
Than Frankenstein does. And then comparing Dracula to It, I would accept an argument for either being the better novel. It hits me on an emotional level that Dracula doesn't.
I am very similar. I struggled with this a little bit because I'm sitting there reading it and I'm like, I think Dracula is the best classical horror novel ever written.
Yeah.
And I think it is the best modern horror novel ever written.
Yes.
And in this case, I lean a little bit towards modern. It's my number 2.
Okay. And then but your 3 is The Mist.
Yeah.
Which I think is my 4. Yeah, we have our... So my top 4 is It, Dracula, Frankenstein, Mist. Yours is It, Dracula, The Mist, Frankenstein.
Yeah, because The Mist just hits a few things for me personally that I enjoy more.
As of right now, it is my number 2 after Frankenstein.
Ooh.
I like it.
Frankenstein has this distinct advantage of being shorter and being just a little bit sweeter on the actual verbiage and overall story it's trying to tell for me. Dracula, on the first read, has that midsection that is just a little bit less than enthralling for me. So I think Frankenstein's really big advantage is it's shorter and
that's fair.
Much more focused. Now, on a second read, it is likely that those two will swap.
I accept that argument.
I think a lot of your issue with the middle part is it coming out of left field and just be like, what the hell is this?
That's, well, it's to me, it's like when we had that conversation about not to compare them, of course, but like expectations versus what you get.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what this is too. I think is that midsection to me. I kind of wasn't ready for it, based on what 150 pages of the first part of Dracula, which is just so seeped in what I anticipated Dracula to be like.
I think that itself could be a novel, like a novella. Mm-hmm. It just with a vague, depressing ending. Like you don't know what happens to Jonathan Harker.
Yeah.
So that's really like I said. I can probably see this like on a second read being much more forgiving of that.
Well, if you read it again, we'll do a pre-show and you can update your opinions. Yeah, that'd be great.
Awesome.
All right, or maybe even a mini bonus episode. We'll see. Okay. Baba Snooka.
The
Babadook. The
Zombie Day Skip.
Kookadook. Yeah, I mean, we'll do Zombie Day for the movies. Homework. what is your dream adaptation of Dracula? It be either one that exists that you think is the best, or one that you want to exist. Mr. Hef.
So this was a tough question.
Don't call my name, teacher. I didn't do my homework.
I did do my homework, actually.
Okay, good.
It was just, it was kind of a tie. It's basically Quentin Tarantino doing a stage play.
I'd watch that.
The reason is because I think Quentin Tarantino, as verbiage-driven as he is, we would get very little taken out of the actual performance.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the dialogue that he likes to stretch out forever. And a stage play, because I think stage plays with an ensemble cast are much more gratifying, as I have seen very many.
I would watch that. I think I ever mentioned this to you. When we were doing our 13 Nights of Halloween,
Yeah.
the WVU, the theater up there, was doing a musical version of Carrie. And I was like, if we weren't already committed to this, I would make him go up there and watch it with me and do an episode
No,
on it.
that would have been great.
I know, but
Yeah.
we were like super committed to that 13 Nights of Halloween
We know
bullshit.
better. We know better now.
Yeah, now we know. Don't
Two
do
nights
that.
of Halloween.
2 nights, maybe 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have the weekend of Halloween.
Oh my god. Daniel.
Okay, so mine would be a video game.
Okay.
And Ryan has actually played The Vampire, or some of it, on the PS4.
Oh, yeah. I like that. I
And
just
it
got
would-
pissed at it.
And it would be a strange mix of that and Sherlock Holmes versus Jack the Ripper. So it'd be like you'd be playing as like the various characters solving the mystery, collecting items that you need, and super easy to die. So if you fuck up, you're gonna get fucking massacred. It's great.
Mine is also a video game. A little different. Okay, so it has a super long prologue tutorial, which I normally hate. That's a huge trigger for me. Except for
Stranding. Sorry, continue.
For me, the super long prologue is just the whole Jonathan Harker section. In the prologue / tutorial, you play as Jonathan Harker. Your choices are limited, but that's how you learn the game mechanics, and the story is established in that. The actual game begins when Jonathan Harker goes over the wall the second time. Sorry, I can't say go over the wall without thinking. That's when the open world London part of the game begins, and you get to choose. Would you like to play as Mina Harker? Would you like to play as John Seward? Or you get to choose the character that you're going to play as, and it's like a story-driven dialogue game where there's sort of like a Telltale game, but there's more of like a collection aspect of it, where you're picking up journal pages and letters as you go through, and you're exploring the various places, but you experience the story of Dracula from various characters' perspectives. So there's a lot of replay, because like, oh, the first time I'm going to play as Mina, and the second time I'm going to play as John Seward. But you find, like, the developers find a way to tie Renfield into every character's journey with it, so that Renfield is more of a constant presence. But then it all winds up at the same place, where the final arc of it is the confrontation with Dracula, and regardless of who you play, you end up there.
I love this. I want to play this game.
Yeah, that's the game.
It's too bad Telltale isn't a thing anymore.
Skybound. Well, I mean, their games are being continued, just not by them. Like we're finally get the Wolf
Among Us season 2. That's all I want. That's all I want.
Fables. Yes.
He's so right.
Best comic franchise.
They gave us every other sequel I didn't want. Like, Walking Dead is fine. Walking Dead is fine for those who want it. I don't want it. I want The Wolf Among Us.
Those games are so good, though. Clementine is bae. Clementine is like a horror Lisa Simpson. Okay, question for the listeners. What Dracula adaptations would you like to see us cover? We have a schedule, but if there's a demand for something, we might make an adjustment. We might make, we might do a bonus episode. Right now, we're definitely doing Nosferatu, Bela Lugosi Dracula, Bram Stoker Dracula. And when they come out, we will be doing Renfield and Last Voyage of the Demeter.
Woo!
For further reading, if you enjoy classic vampire literature, definitely check out Carmilla, the Vampire by John William Paldori, and the Family of the Vortilac. If you like Gothic literature, definitely Frankenstein. If you want more Bram Stoker vampire goodness, Powers of Darkness and Dracula's Guest. If you want something more on the modern side, Salem's Lot is my favorite modern, I don't want to say adaptation, but, inspiration.
Yeah.
Other recommendations for further reading if you enjoy Dracula?
I would probably check out some modern vampire books if you're just interested in vampires in general. The Vampire Chronicles, even though I'm kind of critical of them, I think that there's some enjoyment you can get out of that.
Is that the Anne Rice?
Yeah.
Okay.
Vilfs. Look into Vilfs.
Salma Hayek. Look into Salma Hayek.
From Dusk Till Dawn, Helsing, and Dance in the Vampire Bund. Done.
Yeah, Mina Tepish was supposed to be on your list.
That was the one I cut.
You could have. I was expecting you to put her adult form because I had an honorable mention that was her child form.
I had her on the list, and she was the one I cut.
I know.
I cut her in favor of Mavis's mom.
I think that's the better change. That's funny.
Yeah.
I was not ready for that at all.
I wasn't ready for Mavis's mom.
No. Nobody ever is.
She is, in fact, a vampire MILF.
She's a MILF. All right. Well, upcoming on the Horror Babylon next week, we are doing our Victor Frankenstein episode. Following Sunday, January 29th, we are reviewing Dracula's Guest by Bram Stoker, and because that will be on the shorter side, I will be subjecting Daniel to some Horror of Babylon trivia.
Which just means he's going to humiliate me by seeing how dumb I am.
You need to study up. You need to start listening to some of our backlog. You need to start getting ready, because if you do badly, I will hit you.
With his empathy stick.
Oh no, I'm going to come on an episode.
Okay, Mo, settle down. Settle down, Mo. First Sunday in February, we will be reviewing the unauthorized Dracula adaptation, Nosferatu. Well, thank you both for staying up till 1:30 in the morning and recording with me.
I have decided to skip the gym and get food.
Yeah, I would do the same in your place.
Same. I'm with that.
And
I vibe with that.
Stay tuned for our socials. And thank you to our beloved patrons, Abigail the First, Breaker of Chains, Mother of Dragons, and
Logan, the Full Metal Patron.
They bring the show to you. We really appreciate them. Can't say enough good words. They are my favorite people. All right, thank you for listening. Stay tuned for our socials and stay scary.
Stay scary, everybody.
Stay scary, folks.
And now for the obligatory socials. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow Daniel at DStarSick on Twitter. Follow Ryan at Darth Damio on the Bluebird app. You can find the podcast on Twitter at HorrorPod69. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Slasher, and Goodreads. Become part of the Disturbed community by asking for the Facebook group and Discord links. Send dick pics to the Horror of Babylon podcast at gmail.com. Support the show at patreon.com/the Horror of Babylon. In closing, you can let your friends know that The Horror of Babylon is available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, and all other major podcast apps. Stay scary.